Today, we're going to be speaking with Isaiah Martin, who's a candidate for House District 18 in Texas, which has a special election this November. And bigger picture, we've been covering Isaiah so that you know this kind of surge of young progressive Democrats who want to get involved. This is something Bernie Sanders has been talking about. He's been saying, hey, not just vote, but also run for office. And that's what you're doing. So tell me a little bit about why you're even doing this. I mean, you've got a large social media following. You're 26. You could be doing a lot of different things. I mean, why this? What's the goal?
Well, first off, thanks for having me, David.
Of course.
Big fan and
Thank
supporter of
you.
your show. To be honest with you, I'm running for Congress because we cannot afford to miss this moment. I mean, right now we are seeing an erosion of our rights, an erosion of our economy, and we're seeing, just quite frankly, that we need people that have a spine and a backbone to get to Congress and really shake things up. So when I talk to people all around my district, they are sick of the status quo and they want somebody that's going to be unapologetic in their corner. And so that's why I announced my candidacy, and I've been proud of the effort that we've been able to build ever since.
I want to talk a little bit about the kind of moment that we're in and get your thoughts. I think this will be interesting for the audience, your thoughts on some of the things that are going on right now and sort of what your approach would be were you in office.
Yeah,
You have criticized Democrats for caving to Trump-aligned Republicans.
that's right.
If you had been in Congress during the shutdown situation, what would you have voted to do? Would you have voted to shut down the government rather than pass the stopgap bill?
Well, I don't really view it as a vote to shut down the government because what House Democrats and so many had offered was a short 30-day extension in order for them to get a clean continuing resolution. Because when you examine that bill, it was not a clean CR that the Republicans had offered.
Right.
So, as a result of that, it was very clear that they were playing partisan games. And I don't believe that Democrats, under any circumstances, should have bent the knee in that measure. So, I would have stood with a good chunk of the House Democratic Caucus and ensured that we voted for a clean CR and a 30-day extension so we can get that really onto the table.
And if your hypothetical constituents in Texas's 18th district, when you did that, came to you and said, "Hey, Isaiah, I get the idea of what you're doing, but we suffer when the government shuts down, even temporarily," what do you say to them?
Well, I would say that that's 100% on the Republicans because
Mm,
it's the Republicans that control the House, the Senate, and the White House. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it is the Republicans that are not being honest with the people of this country. They are proposing massive cuts to veterans benefits. I know that when we examined the bill, we saw cuts to storm recovery that was inside of the bill that they had. That's not an acceptable outcome for the people of my district. We have hurricanes all of the time. And so I would have told them that I'm holding the line to be able to preserve the funding that we do have. And that's why I would have been working relentlessly to get that CR to keep the government open. Because any idea of a shutdown would have been on the Republicans that control every single level of government inside of Washington, D.C.
All right, let's talk about some of your other policy ideas. And I encourage people to check out your website. You talk about healthcare, you talk about infrastructure, energy reform, immigration, gun safety regulations, which I want to come back to.
All right.
One of the things that is just sort of a reality is that at the national political level, there are often trade-offs or compromises that have to be made
Right.
to get what it is you think is best for the people in your district. Can you talk a little bit about what sorts of compromises are you willing to make, if you're willing to make any? I assume you are because you strike me as extremely pragmatic and sort of a
Yeah.
realist. What sort of compromises are you willing to make with Republicans in order to get some of the things you outline on your website? And what sort of things would be over the line for you?
Well, I think that it would depend on the particular issue. I mean, I think that everything is different, so it would depend on the particular situation or hypothetical. But what I would say is that in order for us to be able to bring change, sure that there are going to have to be some concessions, but we have to always hold the line on our principles. I'll give you a perfect example.
Yeah.
There is a big contingent of people that want particularly to cave on the idea of reproductive rights inside of our state in terms of federally. I don't really view that as a reason to compromise because I know that for so many people, particularly inside of my district, we are seeing women that ultimately want to have children and then ultimately end up having a pregnancy complication. And it is a man that is a bald dude in a state capitol telling them that they can't go get care for a pregnancy complication. I think that's outrageous. And so I'm not really for those type of things. And I think that we have to always hold our principles to prevent a further incursion on our rights.
Let's talk about the gun safety regulations a little bit. I think this
Okay.
is super interesting.
Yeah.
You tell me if I'm going down the wrong track, but you
Yeah.
support a ban on AR-15 purchases nationally, right? I
Correct.
believe I read that.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
One of the things that is sort of a reality for national elected officials like you, who would be voting to a degree on national policy, is that you are voting on national policy, but you're accountable to those in your district who will decide,
Correct.
does Isaiah get to stay in the House or doesn't he?
Right.
In Texas, voters have overwhelmingly rejected similar ideas to, for example, banning AR-15 purchases, even after mass shootings, which, of course, to me is absolutely crazy,
Yeah.
but it is what it is. How do you talk to gun owners in the 18th district of Texas and explain to them that you want to ban AR-15 purchases nationally, which they voted that they don't want to do?
Right. So, I mean, I would say that the voters of my district are actually vehemently in favor of it. Statewide Republicans might, have issues with it, but in my district, we understand very clearly what happened in Santa Fe, which is a couple miles down the road from our district, in
Yeah.
which numerous children lost their lives as a result of a school shooting. I remember when Congresswoman Jackson Lee, my mentor, went and had a field hearing in Uvalde to go and meet with the parents that were affected by it. I remember being there and meeting people like Brett Cross and the parents of so many others that were affected by this. So throughout the entirety of my district, we have always been abundantly clear that we don't want our children to go into an environment where a mass shooting could happen inside of their schools. We don't want parents to get text messages saying that their school is in lockdown. That is an unacceptable outcome. The people of my district have always stood for that. And that's what I want to make sure that I'm bringing to Congress as their voice.
Some Democrats believe that national campaigns should avoid the issue of gun safety because it doesn't bring in any new support, but it can sort of anger and dissuade folks who are against gun safety regulations and get them out voting against Democrats. Do you buy that?
No, I don't, because Bill Clinton campaigned on it and he did it. And so I think that nationally, it has been something that is, ever since the AR-15 purchasing ban expired and it sunsetted, we have seen a further implosion and continuing of the raising of those numbers. So I'm not really buying that per se. I think it's all about how we present it. We can understand that we preserve the idea of the Second Amendment without saying that we should have weapons of war like the AR-15 being able to be bought on our streets.
Do you see yourself more of a sort of nuts and bolts legislator type role or more of a movement leader once you're elected?
That's kind of interesting. To be honest with you, I think that one could be both. I mean, I think that it's very important to do the work in Congress legislatively. I mean, we've got to make sure that we're watching out for these bad amendments and everything else. But I believe fundamentally that the war in front of us is more of an information war game that we have to go put out. It's not no longer the whole job to just go and vote against bad bills and vote for good bills and to vote for good legislation. You have to make sure that you're communicating to your constituents. And that means reaching out to them in any way possible, whether it's shows like yours or whether it's other podcasts or whether it's on the radio or nightly TikTok lives like I do every single night that get 15,000 people. It is through going out there and communicating to people to let them know what's going on. And I think that we can inspire a wave of change in which people are unafraid of going on any platform, answering any question, and being accountable directly to the people.
Are there elected Democrats right now that you think are doing the social media thing correctly?
There are some. I mean, I think that I think that Jasmine Crockett's doing a great job on social media. I mean, I think that there are people that engage very well, that are very authentic. I think Chris Murphy is somebody who has done a very good job on social media engaging people. Um, but ultimately, I think what we do is a little bit different. You know, every single night we go and take unscripted questions from people on TikTok.
Yep.
And I view that that is something that has been really effective to reach not only the people in my district, but for many that are feeling as if politics is not working for them, as if politics has left them behind, that people in politics don't listen to them. I feel as if it is something that makes sure that people know that I'm always accountable, I'm always available, and you can ask me anything because I'm always there.
One of the things I think is interesting about this sort of youth movement within the Democratic Party and a kind of desire for a new generation of leadership is that, on the one hand, age can bring fresh ideas. Young age, I guess I would say, can
Yeah.
bring fresh ideas. But there's
Right.
also the sort of real reality that it also means less experience, sort of by definition. It's just the younger you are, the fewer years one has had with which to get the experience of building coalitions, passing legislation, et cetera. Can you talk about how someone like you would win over maybe skeptical older Democrats in your own party if you were to go to DC?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the biggest things is that this is an environment unlike anything that we've ever seen before. Nobody has experience with dealing with this particular junction when you have a man that is trying everything he can to be a dictator. And so ultimately, what I've seen in my district is that we have built such a strong coalition of both older voters and younger voters. We've had people that have signed up to volunteer that are in their 80s and people that have signed up to volunteer that are just 18 years old. So we have been able to build those coalitions because ultimately it is through understanding that we have to communicate. And so I don't believe that we are doing that correctly. And I
Yeah.
believe that that's going to be something that we're going to be pushing in Congress.
Yeah, I think it's a mistake that sometimes is made to assume that the followers of the individual all sort of must be the same age. And what I
Yeah.
mean by that is Bernie Sanders is in his 80s, but he's been
Right.
extraordinarily energizing to new voters. I was just doing a talk yesterday for a journalism class, and someone in the class assumed that most of my followers are under 30. And I said, you look at our TikTok demographics,
Yeah.
65 plus is big. You look at our YouTube demographics,
Right.
55 plus is a big area.
Right.
I think that we should not assume that young voters only want young candidates or vice versa.
That's
But
right.
the idea here is you can be an older seasoned voter and simply recognize that it's time for a new generation. And I think to
Right.
some degree, that's kind of what you're saying.
Absolutely. I mean, because I look at my demographics, it's the exact same thing. I mean, it is pretty much split very evenly amongst every demographic one can find, whether it's old or younger. And ultimately, what we are seeing is that people are just sick of the same old, same old. They're sick of it. And they're tired of the same old BS. They're tired of the same old stale politics, and they know that it's not working. And so, to say that one has experience in a system that is just ultimately not what we need right now, is not what people are craving. They're tired of the backroom politics. They're tired of the same old games of before. And I represent a new change and a depart from that. And I look forward to bringing that to DC.
I want to talk a little bit about the purse strings sort of financial management aspect of the 435 members of the House.
Mhm.
You have a platform that's talking about a lot of federal investment in your district, which of
Yeah,
course makes a lot of sense.
that's right.
One of the realities is that federal dollars often come with a lot of strings attached. And in Texas, the regulatory environment at the state level is relatively permissive in terms of what those strings attached might mean. Are there any federal conditions that you would reject, even if it meant losing funding for your district? Areas where you say, in 2025, 2026, right now, the way the world is, this is over the line for me in terms of what I would accept to get money in for my district.
When you say conditions, what do you mean by that?
Money, okay, Isaiah, we'll give you X for Texas 18, but you've got to accept money for this chemical plant that's going
Mhm.
to exist in a regulatory
Yeah,
environment where if you live downwind, you're going to get the toxic smoke,
yeah.
this sort of thing that's often quid pro quo when it comes to
Right,
funding.
right, right. Like I said, I think that a lot of these things kind of depend on the hypothetical situation, but I know for us, we have a really big problem particularly when it comes to statewide Republicans that are ultimately always allowing these big projects that pollute our water, pollute our air. Case in point, in Fifth Ward is a portion of my district in which we have seen cancer clusters, in which you have entire streets, in which you
Yep.
have four, five, six families that are getting cancer because of what has been going into the water as a result of those things. So, from the pollution standpoint, it's not something at all that I'm willing to compromise on in order for our district. I know the other thing that is happening is grants for education per se. The Republicans want to continuously take funding away for our libraries, take funding away from our after-school programs. Those are also not things that I'm willing to waver on. So, I mean, I think that it would really depend on the particular situation. But what I have seen is that statewide Republicans are always doing everything they can to incur into our district and to make us sicker. And I don't think that we should be allowing that.
We've been speaking with Isaiah Martin. Isaiah is a candidate for House District 18 in Texas. This is a special election, November 4th, 2025. Isaiah, thank you so much for talking to us today. Best of luck with the campaign. We're going to be following it really closely.
Absolutely. And thanks so much. And if anyone wants to learn more about my campaign, they can go to isaiahmartin.org, ISAIAHMARTIN.org.